This week on Steam Deck seems to be leading a charge that is resulting in tremendous growth for Linux. This is sort of leading to trends that benefit all PC gaming and not just gamers on the Steam Deck itself. It does raise some interesting questions though, and I want to address those as well. Additionally, Valve is introducing a cute little feature for Steam Deck as well as support for some pretty surprising hardware. And sadly, we do have to say goodbye to Game Informer and the beloved RomHacking.net. Over the years, RomHacking has faced its share of tumultuous times, but it has been the #1 hub for ROM hacks for a very long time. We'll talk about what led to this and what happens next. Throughout today's show, I'm going to have trailers on screen for recent games that you can play on deck. Leave a comment, let me know which ones interest you, and maybe I can give away a few Steam keys. Let's get into the show, and be sure to leave a like and a sub on my way to 100K. It's already incredibly well known that the Steam Deck has helped Linux grow tremendously. When the Steam Deck released, approximately 1% of Steam players were using Linux. Now, 2 years after its release, approximately 2% of Steam players use Linux. That may still seem incredibly small, I admit, but nearly single-handedly, the deck has doubled use of Linux on Steam. It's nice that to this point, Valve has been very open with sharing data from their hardware survey because it gives us insight into things like this. Most recently, Valve published a hardware survey result for the month of July, and it shows no growth or decline for Linux, with Linux still enjoying approximately 2% of the market share, same as last month. But this belies something else that seems to be happening underneath the surface. It's a change that we're not really seeing in the hardware survey yet, but maybe we're going to see it in a few months as things start to settle. Today's story comes to us courtesy of boilingsteam.com, who has been analyzing data from ProtonDB and has found a very curious trend. BoilingSteam.com put together this excellent chart that shows how the relative popularity of different Linux distros have changed over time. One thing you can see is that the distro at the top is Arch Linux. This is the distro being used in the Steam Deck, and to that end, you can see that it has grown tremendously from 8.2% at the beginning of the chart to now 21.1% in the most recent dataset. What is surprising, however, is the explosive growth of the second distro on this chart, Fedora. It started at 3.7% and in recent times has grown to 12.4%. So how is it that Fedora has grown this much and even surpassed the venerable Ubuntu and Linux Mint? Well, this is just a theory, but Boiling Steam proposes that perhaps it's Bazzite that is causing this explosive growth for Fedora. Bazzite is a Linux image that is based on Fedora distro, but it's otherwise completely modeled by how SteamOS on the Steam Deck works. If you've been paying attention to the ROG Ally X at all, you may have seen a ton of YouTubers showing off Bazzite on the Ally X. That includes myself, because honestly, it is that impressive. You get all the Ally X power, but you get an experience that is more like the Steam Deck and avoids Windows, including all of its pitfalls and, for that matter, all of its benefits. So it looks like Bazzite's growth has been meteoric and has very much caused a shift in what distro Linux enthusiasts are choosing to use. These enthusiasts, who are otherwise known for their penchant to customize, are looking for an experience that is gaming-centric and streamlined towards that goal. Personally, I'm really happy to see this. I know a lot of people have been saying that they want Valve to release the general purpose SteamOS that they have been promising, but it seems like they're still a long way from that. Instead, it seems like Bazzite is going to be the way to go. Inevitably, Linux is going to continue to grow in popularity. As it does, it seems the question of whether developers should build Linux native games continues to be revisited. Personally, I think developers are far better off supporting Linux by way of Proton, and that brings us to the second big story of the week, with a new Steam game, or really launcher, corrupting Steam Decks. Jackbox Megapicker is a brand new game launcher on Steam, but wait, it's not your ordinary launcher, it's actually really cool. There's a series of party games that are bundled in packs called Jackbox Party Packs, and there's 10 of those bundles by now. Each of the 10 Jackbox Party Packs comes with 5 games that you can play with friends and family. These are the sort of games that are meant for everyone, like Drawful, which is kind of like a digital version of Pictionary, or Fibbage, where you try to catch other players in a lie. People join games using a phone, so you don't even need extra controllers. That makes it perfect for any setting. One thing people have wanted for a long time, however, is a way to launch any of their Jackbox games from one launcher. Enter Jackbox Megapicker. This app makes it easy to switch to and play any one of the 50 Jackbox party games that you own. There is just one problem though. It was literally bricking Steam Decks. It's still a little unclear to me how this is possible and why this was happening, but Steam Deck HQ reports that it would corrupt your Steam installation, forcing you to reinstall SteamOS or do a factory reset. It gets weirder than that, however, because it was specifically the native Linux version of this game that was corrupting Steam Decks. So when Valve announced that they fixed this problem, they said a hotfix has been issued to select Proton by default for the Jackbox Mega Picker. That, of course, means that they were able to fix this problem for the Steam Deck users by forcing Steam Deck to run the Windows version of the launcher via Proton as opposed to the native Linux version. This entire saga has caused people to revisit the question of whether game developers should even bother making a native Linux build of their game. Officially, Valve has stated that they're happy if you support Linux either way, either with a dedicated build or by using a Windows build that leverages Proton. In practice, however, I personally have noticed that the latter seems to mean less work for the developer, yet a more consistent experience for the consumer. So personally, I think leveraging Proton ends up being the better way. Despite the state of modern engines, making a native Linux build is not as simple as checking a box. Furthermore, it has to be thoroughly tested independent of the Windows build, or you may find yourself with problems, just like this weird one with the Jackbox Mega Picker, although hopefully much less severe. Additionally, players have noticed that if a game supports Steam Cloud Save, that feature may not work as expected when trying to transfer play from Windows to Steam Deck or vice versa. That's because developers aren't always aware of the extra care that is needed to ensure that save files are compatible across the two operating systems. If they fail to take this into consideration, then you won't be able to transfer your play at all, meaning that Steam Cloud Saves just don't work for you. Consequently, many game development companies actually end up abandoning the notion of a native Linux build. Night Dive Studios did this with System Shock Remake, which came out last year and plays incredibly well on Steam Deck. Proton makes it so that not only can you avoid making a native Linux build, but you're probably better off for it. Honestly, I think it's pretty incredible that Proton exists at all, but what do you think? Should developers be making native Linux games or just using Proton? Let me know in the comments. All of that said, I hope that this PSA hasn't scared any of you away from the Jackbox games because they are truly an incredibly worthwhile experience. Drawful 2 is currently free through the end of August, so consider adding that to your library and playing with friends. Now that Valve has fixed the problem, you should feel a lot more comfortable that your system is safe from the corruption that many others were experiencing. By the way, all of this talk of multiplayer makes me want to ask, have you noticed how great the Steam Deck is as a party console? There's so many great local multiplayer games, compatibility with all sorts of controllers, and it's portable. Just this past weekend, I had a gaming night with my good friend Dan and his wife, and we had an absolute blast. We really wanted to do a backyard gaming night, so I took this gaming projector from BenQ with me. Many thanks to BenQ for sending this my way. This is the new BenQ X300G, and it's a projector that is specifically intended for gaming. That means that not only can it do 4K visuals, but it also has super low latency, going as low as under 5 milliseconds if you choose the 1080p 240Hz option. Now, even though Dan and I were really looking forward to some backyard gaming, nature had other plans and the rain kept us from enjoying an outdoor setup, but we were not deterred. We did set it up indoors, and thankfully this is a short throw projector, so we didn't even need much space. We set it up on a milk crate, connected it to my ROG Ally X using a single USB-C cable, and enjoyed some awesome gaming. I threw on Hot Wheels Unleashed because the colors look gorgeous on this display, but one of our favorite games to play is Lethal League, so we knew we had to play that too. First, I faced off against Dan's wife, who doesn't really play video games, but she did kick my ass. Then I got some rounds in with Dan, who also kicked my ass. Turns out I really suck at this game, but I'll say this, I can at least feel comfort in knowing that I suck and not that I'd lost due to lag. Lethal League is a game where response time is extremely important, and Dan and I had some epic volleys showing off how responsive this game was on the X300G. Honestly, we were all surprised by this thing. I did not realize how far along projectors have come. I can use this to play PS5 at home in 4K or take it to a friend's to play something like Lethal League, and those are both going to be great experiences. It also comes with Android TV so that you can enjoy any of your media, including Plex and Netflix. If you're interested in picking one of these up, I'll leave links in the description, and thanks again to BenQ for sending me the X300G. Alright, I have a bit of an amusing palate cleanser in between bigger stories. Last week, Valve issued an update to Steam that will let people know who in your friend list is playing on Steam Deck with this adorable little icon. You may have noticed something similar before for people that are looking at Steam on their phone, or maybe even people that are on Steam using their VR headset. But now, you can also let people know that you're playing on your favorite handheld. On the subject of updates, it appears that Valve is working on official support for the Deck HD. Deck HD is the mod you can install for your Steam Deck LCD. It makes the screen a lot more vibrant and it's a 1200p display. So in the past, there have been times where a Steam Deck update would break compatibility with this modification, but it looks like that's not going to be happening anymore because we can see it show up in the GameScope source code alongside the various official Steam Deck displays from Valve. This story comes to us courtesy of Sadly It's Bradley, who is a well-known data miner typically specializing in VR. It's always funny to me how often these things leak simply because Valve is pretty much doing a lot of their work in the open. In this case, this all exists in the open source repository for GameScope, and you can see that this code includes specific timings and traits for each display type, and in the case of Deck HD, you can even see that it has 1200 for the number of horizontal pixels, seeing as the Deck HD is a 1200p display as opposed to the Steam Deck's 800p display. On the subject of accessories, we should be hearing today about a new Steam Deck product from BenQ, which they're calling the Save Point. They teased subscribers about this last week, and according to the image posted on Reddit, it should be launching on Kickstarter today. They didn't specifically say what it was, but it does seem likely that this is going to be an external drive with USB-C pass-through. That pass-through would allow you to expand storage while still being able to plug your Steam Deck into power. Imagine having a 1TB microSD card, a 2TB internal drive, and however much storage this adds. Given the size, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was an enclosure for a 2230 drive, which means that you can easily have a 5TB Steam Deck without having any weird mods and without losing the ability to charge your device. Do you think this is something that would be interesting to you? Definitely let me know in the comments. Just this last weekend, we had to say goodbye to two video game staples, Game Informer and RomHacking.net. Both are important to me personally for different reasons. Game Informer was incredibly important to my interests in the past, and RomHacking was more of an interest that I was saving for the future. In that way, although I am mourning the loss of both, I feel a bit more devastated by the loss of RomHacking. I know that there are going to be alternatives that pop up, but RomHacking.net was the one-stop shop for mods to all sorts of retro games on all sorts of retro systems. These could range from translation patches to difficulty adjustments to sprite replacements to essentially total conversions of games. The scene always felt a little bit intimidating to me because there were so many different things that I wanted to try, and I never really knew where to start, but there was at least one thing that I knew for sure. Wherever I did start, the thing I was looking for was likely to be on RomHacking.net. So let's talk about what happened. On August 1st, the proprietor of RomHacking, Nightcrawler, posted a message to the site saying that it's time to wind things down. He reflected on the accomplishments of RomHacking, saying, "We outlasted and eclipsed RomHacking sites that came before us. We brought RomHacking from niche and fragmented to global and centralized. We assembled the largest force of ROM hackers on the planet. No doubt this site changed RomHacking forever. It will leave behind a legacy of those accomplishments to remember." But the reflection wasn't all positive. Overseeing such a widely used resource took its toll on Nightcrawler, and although he tried to find a successor that could carry on the legacy, he was unable to find the right person. He did say, however, that a small group of people stepped up to help continue operating the site, but over time he discovered they were being dishonest and deceitful, going as far as to indicate that he was dehumanized and doxxed by these folks. For those familiar with the internal workings of various retro scenes, this story felt very reminiscent of what happened to Nier. Nier was a programmer specializing in extremely accurate emulation of retro hardware. Notably, his emulator BeastNest made huge leaps forward in the emulation scene for Super Nintendo. Sadly, they endured years of tormenting from abusers, including harassment and doxing, and eventually suffered death by suicide. Given these parallels, it is incredibly important to take accusations like these from Nightcrawler very serious. It should also be stated, however, that there have been several statements refuting these allegations. First, the RomHacking Discord staff stated that although things have been rocky between site staff and Discord staff for a while, they are nonetheless deeply confused and disappointed by the accusation of doxing and the implication that they've been threatening. They added that they categorically reject these allegations. Additionally, Nightcrawler's accounts were disputed by a longtime member and revered localizer Gideon G. Gideon said that Nightcrawler exerted iron-fisted control over community-created content and categorically refused basically all offers of help over the last decade. He said that although staff grew increasingly frustrated, they were always attempting to resolve disputes in real time, but Nightcrawler would consistently refuse to discuss these solutions. To the question of whether the staff doxed or threatened Nightcrawler, Gideon says, Hell no, and frankly he's livid at the suggestion. Honestly, this is just a sad story all around and for all people involved. The silver lining for the folks that use RomHacking.net is that Nightcrawler and the site staff have uploaded the entire site database, including 11 gigabytes of files, to archive.org, so your favorite ROM hacks can still be available. Undoubtedly, we will see alternative sites pop up. I hope that we don't see the same level of fragmentation that we saw prior to ROM hacking, but either way, I do plan on continuing my journey of trying a variety of different ROM hacks for my most loved games. I'm not going to end the video on a sad note, so here are some quick, interesting stories and maybe some games to try. We continue to hear more about Valve's upcoming game, Deadlock. You may have seen, for example, that Deadlock's closed beta has had more concurrent players than Concord's open beta. But most recently, founder of SteamDB, Pavel Jundik, noticed that Valve made a big change by replacing the codename of Project 8 staging to simply Deadlock. Perhaps this is a huge step forward, and perhaps it's an indication that they plan to announce the game soon. Personally, I doubt an announcement is coming soon. According to players and according to the footage we've seen, this game does still seem to be in an early state, but who knows, maybe we'll see soon. A long-anticipated total conversion mod for Fallout 4, Fallout London, was recently released and has already been showcased on Steam Deck by friend of the channel, Deck Wizard. This mod is ambitious and is as big as an official DLC from Bethesda. It obviously takes place in London, offering an entirely new experience to fans of the series. If you're interested in how to get this game playing on Steam Deck, I recommend checking out Deck Wizard's video, as he gives really comprehensive instructions on how to install and play this mod on deck. Just this weekend, I learned that the arcade game Time Crisis 5 is not only powered by Unreal Engine 5, but it's also a native Windows game. Like, it has an exe file and everything. Theoretically, this would of course mean that this game is playable on the Steam Deck and you'd be able to use gyro and trackpads for aiming. That's pretty sick. Definitely let me know if this is something that you have tried and how it went. I also want to quickly highlight a couple recent games that are great for Steam Deck and other handhelds. First up are a pair of retro remasters, each at $20. Tomba Special Edition is a remaster of the cult classic 2.5D platformer from PS1, and as quirky as it is, this game still holds up today. Interestingly, the lead engineer for this game is the YouTuber Modern Vintage Gamer. Thankfully, this remaster includes the ability to save anywhere and rewind at any point. It also sports a remastered soundtrack and a brand new interview with creator of the game, Takuro Fujiwara. The next retro remaster is Star Wars Bounty Hunter. You may be scared off by a remaster of a Star Wars PC game done by Aspyr Studios because of the very poor state of Battlefront Collection, but it appears they have learned their lesson because this title is getting glowing reviews from the community, so definitely check it out. Finally, Ingression is a game that was recommended to me by a friend. While this super challenging precision platformer does seem inspired by Celeste, it creates its own identity with an added portal mechanic. This game is pretty unforgiving, but I found myself relentlessly attacking these levels until I cleared them and could let out a sigh of relief. I do have some gripes with the sheer reliance on trial and error difficulty, but as a lover of precision platformers, I kept coming back to this one, and at $9.99 it seems like a good recommendation for fans of the genre. In any case, I have a few keys from recent Humble Bundles, so don't forget to leave a thoughtful comment and maybe I can give some away. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. Deck Gang out. Goodbye!